Celebrity Stage Stories is an Edge magazine special presentation. Each issue of Edge explores a compelling theme with an intriguing blend of essays, articles, and photography, along with interviews with the biggest names in TV, movies, music, and more. Visit Edge Magazine's website for free digital versions of the magazine, exclusive digital content, and more at edgemagonline.com, and follow them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram today. Now, on with the show.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Celebrity Stage Stories with Jerry Strauss. I am, of course, he, and we are here, as always, powered by our friends at Edge Magazine, and we are here for the first time, and I can't believe that it's taken this long to get here, because as a pro wrestling guy personally for much of my life, we are finally going to dive deep into one of the most enduring forms of entertainment in pop culture. And we're going to do it with a guy who is behind a lot of what many of us have come to grow up loving. Can't think of anyone better to dive into this with because he wrote a book about it. And it's called There's Just One Problem. And he is a driving force behind World Wrestling Entertainment Creative over 15 years, former head writer for WWE, current SVP of development at Dwayne Johnson and Dany Garcia's Seven Buck Productions, EP of NBC's hit sitcom Young Rock, and of course, he is now an author as well. He is Brian Gewirtz. Brian, how are you?
Jerry, thank you. Thank you for that awesome intro. Appreciate it.
It's a lot to read. You've done a lot, Brian. No, it's so cool to have you here, really. And first of all, right off the bat, again, and we see your you've got artwork behind you as well. I know that there's a lot of celebration about this book. You know, even before it's actually technically been released to the world, so to speak. So we're kind of anticipating all the love. And anyone who's even circled around wrestling or even pop culture knows that since really the late 90s, early 2000s, there's been many a wrestling related book released. But I think there's still unique and different stories to tell. And yours is certainly one of them, because I don't remember anyone from your point of view, the point of view of creative, going this in depth and writing a book and taking us into that world. So it's really cool for long time and new wrestling fans to be able to learn about the world from your perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, I thought that, you know, I could, if I was going to tackle something, I could kind of take it from two perspectives. You know, one from, you know, the inside, behind the scenes stories that vast majority, 99.9% of the people don't know about. In some of these iconic moments in wrestling from like late 99 to the mid 2010s. But also from the other side, and this is where you really, you know, at least, you know, in my head, don't need to be a diehard wrestling fan to kind of appreciate. And that's just like the story of an outsider coming into a world that they are completely, you know, they think they know what's going on, but really have no idea. You know, as a non-wrestling lifer, as a person who never considered writing for wrestling before, and always had a one-track mind to be a television writer and specifically a sitcom writer, but not a wrestling writer, because what even is that? I mean, nobody, you know, growing up in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, you never really even stopped to consider it. So yeah, the like kind of Alice in Wonderland-esque approach of a stranger in a strange land coming into this crazy world, you know, I think gives kind of a hopefully an entry point for people who just, you know, hopefully want to hear a good story.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is. And, you know, I have the book here. I've been lucky enough to be able to read it. And there's so many different surprising things about your story. And I think so many things that people naturally would want to know. In anybody's journey into this crazy world of pro wrestling, specifically working for World Wrestling Entertainment, the story of how they got there never fails to deliver, right? Like everyone has a unique, different, weird way that they got to play in this playland for as long as they have. Yours is interesting because you actually passed up an opportunity to join the company in a different capacity before before destiny kind of was fulfilled, and you came in at a later date. Looking back at that, do you feel like things worked out for the best for you? Because, you know, obviously had this amazing career and these great accomplishments with WWE. Is there any regret that you didn't come into the company a little bit early? Did you think that you waited for the right time and then the right role for you as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because yeah, and I get obviously into it in the book, but ultimately after my first set of interviews back in July or August of '99,
Mm.
the way Vince ended it was, "I'll make you an offer you can't refuse, and you'll come work for us." And like you pointed out, I did refuse it
Yeah.
because it was a job at at the time I'll just use WWE overall
Yeah.
to keep things easier, but it was WWE.com. It wasn't on television. I had written on 3 sitcoms at that point, or 2 sitcoms, and was about to start a third sitcom. And even though these weren't exactly, Cheers and Raymond and stuff, it's good to have it under your belt. You're just starting. I was in my mid-20s, and it was unbelievable for me. It was exactly what I wanted. So yeah, it was kind of easy to turn down, a job writing on WWE.com. No offense to WWE.com. It just wasn't something I wanted to do. But then, yeah, the circumstances happened where they had 2 writers at the time who left to go to WCW, the rival company, and an opening, obviously turned up.
Yeah.
So, I started November '99. If I had taken the job at WWE.com right then and there, August of '99, you're really only talking about a few months. So I don't know if that would have changed dramatically. What would have changed? I'm sorry. What I did ponder constantly while
Mm.
working there, especially in the beginning, especially when I was, sitting in a Waffle House, which I had never been to before, growing up on the East Coast in New York, which is great, by the way. I love Waffle House, but
Of course.
when I was pondering that at like 2 o'clock in the morning, as we're driving between, towns that I'd never been to before in, Fayetteville, Louisiana, Bossier City, like all these places that, were brand new to me, sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, did I make a mistake? Leaving Hollywood. And, as I'm like halfway through a 210-mile drive at 1 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock in the morning now, and we have to get ready to write SmackDown at 7 a.m. in Vince's hotel suite. Like,
Mm.
was this really the right call? But, in hindsight, yeah, I think it was, because it was, an unbelievable experience. It led to many great relationships, not only with The Rock. I mean, obviously, that's huge. And I work for him and Dany's production company now, and enjoying every second of it. But
Mm.
just like the friendships in general in wrestling, there's an old axiom that it's like the Harry met Sally, men and women can't be friends because of the sex. Like, wrestling writers and wrestlers can't be friends because the TV time gets in the way. Like, are they really your friends, or are they using you to kind of buddy up to get on TV? But I've been out of WWE now for, completely now for over 7 years, and
Mm.
I'm still very good friends with a lot of wrestlers. So yeah, I don't necessarily consider that axiom true.
You brought up, kind of your fork in the road, so to speak, in your history in sitcoms. I'm curious, is there anything from your experience in the sitcom world that you kind of carried with you when you came to WWE that you feel like, looking back, kind of colored your approach to what you did with WWE in the beginning or ongoing? Like, was there anything new and fresh from outside of that bubble that you were able to bring in?
Well, from a just a professional in the writers' room standpoint,
Mm.
as I write in the book, I'm pretty introverted, kind of still am, but in the writers' room, like a writer, it's very intimidating, especially if you're introverted, in your early 20s, sitting around a table with people who've been in the business for years, and you need to pitch jokes and put yourself out there, because yeah, you could pitch a joke and it could work, and it's the greatest feeling in the world. And you could pitch a joke to dead silence, as you know, and feel like, you're 2 inches tall. So on one of the shows that I'd written on, it was Jenny McCarthy's sitcom on NBC.
Yeah.
uh, that was her coming off of her Singled Out and her own sketch comedy show on MTV. My writing partner and I were staff writers. I was lucky, in the sense, and people are going to go, here we go. But my uncle, Howard Gewirtz, who is a prolific sitcom writer and showrunner, was the co-showrunner of that show. So yeah, it wasn't my first show. I had been, written on another one. But yeah, like he definitely helped. I mean, I'm not going to be oblivious to me and my writing partner getting staffed on that show. But at the same time, there was a very, seminal moment in our careers there, because I'd be the one that would be like pitching to the writer next to me to see if he or she laughed. And then if that got a reaction, I'd pitch it. And
Yeah.
I'd be constantly being told, yeah, not to me, to the room, and then my uncle actually sat me down and said, like, listen, yes, we're related and I want you to succeed, but you need to succeed on your own merits. And if you don't, you need to take the extra step. You need to not just be satisfied to come in, but you got to go over the script at night and in the new draft in the morning and come into work with ideas already, jokes already. If you're going over that script, storylines, if you're not, talking about, future episodes and stuff like that, because if you don't, as awkward as it's going to be, in our future lives, I'm going to have to let you go if you don't step up. That was a huge wake-up call for me. And from that point forward, I just had this mindset of, screw it. If I'm going down, I'm going down swinging.
Yeah.
And that really happened, before WWE. And that mindset and that talk specifically was so helpful, because once I got to WWE, I took that mindset with me, as far as like, yeah, you're pitching wrestling ideas to Vince McMahon. You're, in a room with like legendary wrestlers and former wrestlers and everything else when you're in the production meeting and everything. But you can't be scared. You have to do it. You could be scared maybe in terms of social interactions, which, I definitely was in some respects. But as far as in the room, that mindset from the sitcom, as far as being out there and just putting everything aside and going with your best shot and being vocal, was extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, and you mentioned you mentioned being scared, and it feels like, just based on the timing, there'd be a lot to be scared about when you first came into the company, because you talked about it before. You're replacing two writers who, to my understanding, at that point, the creative of WWE was driven by basically a very small group. These two guys and Vince McMahon, obviously, and it wasn't that far in the past before that it was just like a few guys like sitting around the pool every week, like writing TV. That's the stories we've all heard. But you're at the beginning of the forefront of this whole new era where it's going to grow into this true like writer's room with like a staff of writers. And, you with the company for 15 years, you saw all of that evolution, but you were one of the first, you were a trailblazer. And I have to imagine there wasn't a huge comfort level, between yourself, the wrestlers, like people who were used to things being done the old way. How much did growing pains affect your ability to find your comfort zone and contribute in those first couple of years?
Yeah, there were definitely, it was definitely an adjustment, especially because as an outsider coming in, nothing could truly prepare you for the road. And going to TV, we call them TVs, but it was Raw on Mondays, live every week, SmackDown in another town every Tuesday, even though it was taped, it was live to tape. There'd be editing, but it would air Thursday or Friday, depending on the year. And sometimes a pay-per-view in a different city every 4 weeks. So sometimes there'd be 3 days back to back to back of TV.
Yeah.
So there's the adjustment as far as, just the travel and, your biological, functions and everything adjusting. And then there's the social interactions. And all of a sudden, wrestlers, granted, it may not be like the territory days where, everyone, had traveled all over the world as far as like getting themselves over and not under one umbrella and one company. But there's a lot of, first of all, there were a lot of wrestlers at the time who did, do territories and independent shows and all that type of thing, whether it be former wrestlers who at the time were the producers who put the matches together, or the veteran wrestlers themselves. And there's locker room codes and locker room, certain things that you're supposed to know to do that I didn't know to do. that definitely caught up with me. It led to, the first chapter of the book, which is having to go to wrestler's court for violating some locker room infraction or 2 or 3 or 4. So yeah, that's not something that anything in a Hollywood writer's room can prepare you for. And then at the same time too, the wrestlers themselves, some were very, very cool and open and, hey, how's it going? Good to see you, that type of thing. Some were a little wary of like, who is this guy? Why is this person all of a sudden standing next to Vince McMahon in a production meeting room? Who is this person, and what justification does this person have to be here? And then there were just some like, no, I don't know who this guy is, but there is no possible way. He doesn't look like he's been in a fight. He doesn't look like he's interacted with a female, like all those type of stereotypes, especially because I looked like I was 16 years old at the time. So, that was just something you had to like, you had to adjust to and had to make better in a lot of cases. And, sometimes it was easy to people gave me advice to make things better. And sometimes it just through sheer force of will. And the fact that you look up 4 or 5 years later and it's like, oh, this guy's still around. I guess he must be doing something right. All right, let's see. Let's see what he can bring to the table.
Yeah. It's and this book does such a great job, I think, of covering everything you just said: the good interactions, the kind of slow burns, and sometimes just the really bad, chemistry that you get with different people. And you experienced all that at different points in your career. Wrestler's Court is something that is just one example of, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the wrestling world, this is an opportunity for you to learn firsthand what it's like to be in there. Again, from the eyes of somebody who's never lived in that circus or worked on that surface or a circus before. There's so much that's unlike any other industry, any other profession, anywhere. Like there's, court. They're holding court to judge. Can you imagine like Burger King court? Like, no, like that doesn't happen. But I mean, obviously you were able to ride the wave and make your mark and become accepted over a period of time. And you mentioned, of course, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. You work with he and Dany Garcia's company, $7 Productions. Now, you first connected with him, and you tell this story in the book too, and I don't want to go into too much detail and spoil it, but you connected with him before you worked with WWE on some content for MTV that was related to WWE, and he was the first guy to sort of say to you, have you ever thought about working for World Wrestling Entertainment? What was it about those interactions all the way back then when you guys barely knew each other that made something click for him and say, this guy should be a part of our world?
With Dwayne, it's interesting because, when I met him in that summer, July of '99, I was working, got hired by MTV specifically to write on these 5 SummerSlam specials that they had that year, 5 half-hour shows. And he had already main evented WrestleMania. I mean, that's the pinnacle. That's the peak. He wrestled Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 15. And yeah, you can't get any higher than that. So he truly didn't need anybody's help, but he has this mindset that is so valuable, as far as like, listen, okay, you're the writer. And by the way, he has this mindset still today when it comes to commercials, movies, television, whatever project, all his business projects too. Like, I don't know you, but I'm going to give you a chance. Let's see what, prove, your merit. What do you got? Because if it could help me, great. I get something out of it, and if you can't help me, no harm, no foul. I'm still the freaking Rock. So, it's like, there's a no lose situation as far as he's concerned. So that was his approach when I first met him and handed him the script. It was wrestlers, the wrestlers were introducing their favorite music videos in character. And the challenge, as I found out, as I was like writing these scripts and asking MTV, like, oh, the wrestlers submitted their favorites. And they're like, no, there's a good chance they'd never seen these videos and don't even know who these artists are. Like, okay, it's one of these things. So You just got to write in their voice. And it really, really helped me, the fact that I was a huge WWE fan and had been since I was like 12 years old. So, I just like, hey, I'll write it Triple H's voice because he was the first one, Mankind's voice because he was the second one, and then The Rock was the third one. And, Rock looked over the script. He's like, hey, this is pretty good. We did it. He even suggested doing a vignette with me and him where I was on a payphone and he walked in and he hit me with a, what do you think of my $500 shirt? And I start to answer, it doesn't matter what you think. And then camera, follow me. The Rock's going to electrify MTV in a matter of a moment, all that stuff that wasn't prepared or it was all kind of done on the fly. Only time I've ever, in an official capacity ever acted with him. And it exists on someone's Instagram somewhere.
Sure.
He sent me it. It was a Rock fan Instagram clip. But yeah, and that was his mindset when I started at WWE. And I've seen it. I've seen it in all his, all different mediums. It's like, great. I have the opportunity, a different perspective. I'm not going to prejudge. I'm going to, judge based on the work. And if it works, then I stand to benefit. What's wrong with that deal? That's great. And if it doesn't, then we gave it a shot, So like that, definitely was a huge help for me in starting at WWE.
Awesome. Now, fast forwarding to now, of course, besides the book, I'm sure your world is filled with a lot of $7 Productions work, specifically your work with Young Rock, which has been such an amazing show, such a great success. We're heading to season 3. We've actually had Stacey Leilua on the show here a couple times to talk about, each of the 2 seasons thus far. And whether you're a wrestling fan, whether you're not a wrestling fan, there's something for everyone on the show. You're an EP on the show, but what's your day-to-day, like what's your involvement as far as dealing with what's focused on the show? More wrestling, less wrestling, like what's your involvement with Young Rock?
So yeah, it's a great question because it varies depending on whether we're shooting and not shooting.
Okay.
So right now, this is like in the pre-production phase. We're going to start shooting in Memphis this year in September.
Oh.
And yeah, there's a writer's room out in LA led by Nanachka Khan and Jeff Chang, the showrunners. They have an incredible, really super talented writing team. And they, we have, it's very fun because we have these giant Zooms with Dwayne on it, Dwayne telling us stories. In some cases, me telling stories as it relates to the wrestling world. As we get into the 90s eras and stuff like that. But mainly, when we've met with Dwayne in person as well, and he's just telling us stories about his life. And, they're taking it all in. They're asking a ton of questions. As like the show is like historical fiction. It definitely takes a lot of real life stories and characters. If you're sitting there with a scorecard, treating it like it's a documentary, hey, this person didn't wrestle this person in that territory. Like you're going to waste a lot of time, really. But I'm there. I'm on all the Zooms. We're going over all the outlines, all the scripts. Giving any factual, like clarifications or inaccuracies. Giving like, hey, just so you know, during this time, The Rock did this and blah blah blah. And I'm always texting with Jeff and Notch and Jen Carreras, the EPs on the show. And it's this great open relationship, especially as we, go through all the outlines and all the scripts. Hiram Garcia, who's the president of $7, and Dany's brother, and Dwayne and I were fortunate enough to write an episode last year. It was about Dwayne The Rock's first ever match, not only in WWE, his first match ever, which was a WWE dark match in Corpus Christi. So it was the opportunity to get a first look at Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mankind and Undertaker and Triple H and Mantar. That was really my only goal in being one of the co-writers of that episode, is like, we got to get Mantar in. And then people are like, well, factually it was, he left 1 month before. It's okay. Right. We got to get Mantar in. You won't regret it. And we did. So that was great. And then when we're shooting, that's a whole other animal, because we shot the first 2 seasons in Australia, as you know, and and especially in 2020, height of the pandemic, and Australia was COVID free pretty much, especially where we were in Queensland and Brisbane
Mm.
in season 2 in the Gold Coast. And, from Dwayne's perspective, it was like, I would really, obviously have all the trust in the world in Jeff and Notch and the team, but I really would like somebody down there on set who A, has known me for as long as, for 20 years now, and B, knows that wrestling world inside and out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need you to be like the on-set producer. I don't like, it's not like I have a whistle as the wrestling police, calling a foul.
Right.
I know there's a lot of, okay, to get over is to, have the fans kind of react to you. To
Yeah.
go over is to win a match. To be over means, you're kind of made as a talent as far as being popular.
Lingo. Yeah.
There's a lot of different, versions of over that need to be explained.
Sure.
So, it's like that kind of stuff. And also, obviously, as a, former sitcom writer and everything, being able to pitch, jokes on set and beforehand and that type of thing, alts, whatever it is. They're very, very, it's such a collaborative environment and very open. Also to interact with the actors, to interact with Stacy and Joe and Anna and Bradley and Adrian and Uli, and our cast as far as like, hey, did Rock ever, do this and, that kind of thing? Or like, what is it like, especially with the wrestlers, our the actors who play these legends like Andre the Giant and Randy Savage, Iron Sheik, Wild Samoans, to be able to like, even if I don't have the answer, I have at least half a dozen people on my cell phone that I can call and get an answer from immediately,
Right.
or the next day because of the time difference. But either way, it was an incredible long too, 5.5 months. Well, really 5 months each season in Australia, but I liked it so much that I stayed like an extra couple weeks each time. So
Yeah.
yeah, and now we're shooting in America this year, so that's pretty cool too, because now you get to go home for the holidays, or if
Yeah.
you have a baseball team that hopefully makes the playoffs, maybe take a 3-hour flight back to New York. All those things that are just not possible in Australia.
Right, right. And I mean, we're looking at season 3 as you said. It's a roller coaster. It's a nonstop one too. I think that, this is a show that definitely has so much legs. I'm sure you guys are looking further into the future, and I feel like with every season the show feels like it's getting more and more, almost, I don't know if courageous is over dramatic, but it's more and more bold in feeling confident that looking inside this wrestling world is something that's of interest to everybody and entertaining and funny. And, as you said, it's not necessarily about historical accuracy for those who are like looking at, old magazines from 1975 and such. But there's little things that, wrestling fans have heard in interviews. And, just like one of my favorite things on the show is, the depiction of Pat Patterson. And him going around and hitting people with that line, like, oh, guess who asked about you last week? Nobody. Like, that's something we've heard people, it's public that that's like a thing he used to say, and it's funny to see in the show. uh I mean, is that something that you've been like really cognizant of, just like how well received and entertaining to the world the wrestling world has become through this show?
Yeah, it's huge because, and now we're getting to the point where we're in the 90s and we're introducing characters and people that I didn't have a poster of on the wall, like Roddy Piper and the Savage and Andre, but the people I actually worked with who also happen to be legends in the business, like Pat, as you mentioned, and Downtown Bruno. And now we've got Michael Hayes as a character on the show. Obviously, Vince is a character on the show, and all these people in Brooklyn Brawler, and even Bruce Pritchard in a quick shot in our episode. It's like all these people that, like, the irony of it all, of course, is when I started my first interview at WWE. Before I got to Vince, I was meeting with everyone, and I was really tanking those interviews because I don't really think deep down I was ready to leave the sitcom world to go to WWE. And I was asking, like, hey, you ever consider making a sitcom, 30-minute comedy out of like the real life behind the scenes stuff of wrestling. And, that wasn't in the cards back then in 99. And now it's going to come full circle where all of a sudden, I'm one of the executive producers on a sitcom about, that partially is about the behind the scenes of wrestling in specifically that era now. And obviously we're covering a lot of eras. It's pretty amazing to see it all come full circle, and it's surreal. It truly is to see, like, Pat Patterson and downtown Bruno now being like the equivalent of Norm and Cliff from Cheers, but now on Young Rock on TV in such a wide, to such a wide audience.
And it works, and you're such a big part of it, and it's continues to be so great, as is, of course, there's just one problem, and we know that, this is going to be the new hot button book. This is going to be the book that people are going to be pulling all sorts of quotes from, in addition to all these interviews you're doing. And we thank you, first of all, for talking to us, because we know that life is insane right now for you. So it's
in a good way. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I just want to ask to finish this off, because we asked you before what you learned pre-WWE that you brought into your time with the company. So it begs the question, full circle, over 15 years in that world, what is something that sticks out in your head that you learned from your time there that has helped you since?
That the WWE mindset, there's so many. One of them is, we do everybody's job. And, what was meant by that was like, yes, you're the writer, but if someone asks you to grab something from the other room, or in some cases, we were working on digital features, or at one period of time, we were doubling as magazine, WWE.com columnist. I ended up at WWE.com anyway after all that. But just basically being like, don't like have such a big ego that it's like, well, that's someone else could worry about that. Like if you're asked to do something, if you're part of a team and something needs to be done, even if it's quote unquote not in your job description, you do it because you're working for the, proverbial front of the jersey, not the back of the jersey. And the work ethic, the work ethic of Vince, of Dwayne, of Dany, it's, I'm fortunate enough to, the bosses that I've had since 1999, and even really before that, but it's a different animal when it comes to WWE and everything that Dwayne and Dany do. It's like, it's really hard to, there's never a point in time where you go, well, they're slacking. I guess I could, like, that's just, just inconceivable. They are literally the first ones up and last to go to bed, and they do it. There's so many things, as when you see Vince taking crazy bumps in the ring, when you see Dwayne, and Dany with all their, non-movie endeavors, it's all these things that you say to yourself, well, technically they don't have to do it. Why do they do it? Well, it's not to, grab a paycheck. It's because they love it, and they're, they have this passion about it. And it is pretty inspiring, because I mean, it's one of the reasons why I did this book too. It's like, you see Dwayne, it's like he could just do movies. Dany could just, be the co-founder of $7 and management, but they do their own clothing lines, bodybuilding, tequila, energy drinks, all this type of stuff. And you go, man, that's inspiring. I wonder what I could do that is just beyond my normal, my job set at $7. I'm like, hey, maybe they'll start a book or something. And I asked them, they're like, absolutely, you should totally do that. So yeah, that's kind of like, and they, obviously Dany to a lesser extent, but she's been part of that, environment for years. It's again, that like the wrestling mentality of just like, there's so much hard work, and there's so much like, whenever we'd have Hollywood guest stars, they would just be just in awe of like all the work that goes on to do a show that day, going live 2 or 3 hours, with no, in the actor's case, no cue cards, no prompters, nothing like that. And then, oh, you guys going out to celebrate? Like, no, we got to drive 180 miles to the next town and do it all over again tomorrow. Like, whoa. So yeah, it really prepares you, and it's great in terms of having that hard work instilled into you.
Yeah. With apologies to the great Dwayne Wayne. It truly is a different world, a very unique one as well. And you're going to learn all about it firsthand from this book. There's Just One Problem. Brian Gewirtz, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. It was awesome to get inside your head for a bit.
Jerry, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. And let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you guys for checking us out. We'll see you next time here on Celebrity Stage Stories. Thanks, guys.